Do you feel that? That distinct sinking feeling in your chest when the card reader says approved, but you know exactly what that transaction just did to your remaining balance. It's 2026. You're standing in the middle of a grocery aisle, holding a basket that feels lighter than it did 3 years ago, yet the price tag attached to it has doubled. You aren't imagining it. You aren't bad with money. You aren't lazy. You are simply living through a glitch in the simulation. A patch update to the economic operating system that was designed to phase you out. Let's talk about the number that haunts the nightmares of an entire generation: $30,000. Once upon a time, in a version of this world that feels like ancient history, say 10 or 15 years ago, earning $30,000 a year was the starter pack. It was the entry-level ticket to the game. It wasn't a life of luxury, but it was a playable level. You could pay rent on a decent apartment, keep a used car running, buy groceries without checking your banking app in the parking lot, and maybe, just maybe, save a few coins for the next level. That was the old server. That was the legacy code. Welcome to the 2026 update. In this current build of the economy, $30,000 isn't a starter wage. It is a starvation wage. It is a mathematical impossibility masquerading as an opportunity. And the terrifying part isn't just the number. It's the gaslighting that comes with it. The system, the developers, the policymakers, the corporate narrators, is still acting like the game mechanics haven't changed. They look at you with confused pity when you say you're drowning. They tell you to budget better. They tell you to stop buying the digital skins in the avocado toast, ignoring the fact that the price of the bread itself has risen faster than the server capacity can handle. Imagine for a moment that the economy is a massive, multiplayer online game. For decades, the difficulty curve was steep but manageable. If you grinded, if you put in the hours, you gained XP, you leveled up, and your inventory grew. That was the promise, the social contract. But somewhere around 2020, the code began to corrupt. And by 2026, the corruption has totalized. We are now playing on a server where the currency has been debased so severely that the gold coins in your pocket are essentially decorative. The whales, the top 1% of players, have hoarded so much of the server's resources that the drop rates for everyone else have been set to zero. When we say 30,000 is the new starvation wage, we aren't being dramatic. We are looking at the raw data of survival. Let's break down the inventory costs of simply existing in 2026. Rent is no longer a third of your income. In most major hubs, and even in the sprawling Tier 2 cities, a studio apartment consumes 60 to 70% of a $30,000 salary after taxes. That is a critical system failure. You are working 2 weeks out of every month just to pay for the box you sleep in so you can wake up and go back to work. Then you have the subscription model of life. Food, energy, transportation, connectivity. These aren't optional DLCs. They are requirements to play. The cost of calories has skyrocketed because the supply chains never really healed. They just got more expensive to navigate. The cost of energy, keeping the lights on and the room warm, has turned into a luxury tier expense. When you do the math, when you subtract the shelter and the fuel and the food from that 30,000, what are you left with? You are left with a deficit. You are bleeding health points every single day, slowly and visibly. And this is where the psychological horror sets in. This is the sinking ship mechanic. You are bailing water out of a boat with a teaspoon, while the ocean pours in through a hole the size of a door. You work harder. You pick up a side hustle, a second minigame to grind for extra loot. You drive for the rideshare apps, you sell your creative data, you monetize your hobbies. You exhaust yourself. And at the end of the year, you look at your stats, and you are in the exact same place you started, or perhaps a few steps back. This creates a state of chronic, low-level panic. It rewires the brain. When you are existing on this new starvation wage, your horizon shrinks. You stop planning for 5 years from now because you are trying to survive 5 days from now. The concept of a career dissolves into a series of desperate gigs. The dream of homeownership, that ultimate endgame achievement of the previous generations, has been patched out of the game entirely for you. It's an area of the map you can see, but an invisible wall blocks you from ever entering. The tragedy of 2026 isn't just that people are poor. It's that people who are working full-time, contributing to society, doing everything right according to the old manual are poor. The working poor class has expanded to swallow the lower middle class whole. We have nurses, teachers, junior developers, service managers, people who keep the server running, who are effectively homeless in terms of financial security. They are one bad RNG roll, one car breakdown, one medical emergency away from total account deletion. Why does this feel so heavy? Because you remember the stories of the old server. You have parents or grandparents who tell you about how they bought a house on a single income in 1990. They speak of a game balance that no longer exists. Hearing their advice is like reading a strategy guide for a version of the game that was shut down 10 years ago. It doesn't apply. It frustrates you. It makes you feel like you are failing, when in reality the game is rigged against you. This is the first thing you need to accept to keep your sanity. You are not broken. The game is. The mechanics of value exchange have been severed. Labor no longer equals security. That link has been cut. We are drifting in a new economic ocean where the currents are stronger than your ability to swim. But before we can talk about how to hack this broken system, or at least how to build a raft that won't sink, we need to understand exactly how the developers rigged the casino. We need to look at the source code of this disaster. We need to follow the money, or rather, the ghost of where the money used to be. To find that ghost, you have to look at the administrative logs of the central banks. The real heist didn't happen with a gun. It happened with a keystroke. When we talk about the system being rigged, we aren't talking about bad luck. We are talking about a deliberate mechanic called dilution. Think of the economy as a closed server with a finite amount of gold. In a fair game, gold is scarce, making it valuable. But over the last few years, the server admins, the central banks and governments, executed what gamers would call an infinite loot glitch. They printed trillions of dollars of new currency and injected it directly into the accounts of the major guilds, the banks, the hedge funds, and the megacorporations. They told you this was to save the economy, to keep the server from crashing. But here is the trick they didn't explain in the patch notes. When they print more money, they don't create more value. They don't create more houses, more food, or more fuel. They simply increase the number of tokens chasing those same goods. This is why your $30,000 feels like 15. The currency itself has been nerfed. The gold in your pocket has been debased. It is the silent theft of your time. You worked just as hard this year as you did 5 years ago, perhaps harder, but the energy you stored in that money has leaked out. Now watch how this flows through the game map. The newly printed money reached the whales first. They used it to buy up the assets, the real estate, the stocks, the commodities. They bought the map itself. By the time that money trickled down to your level, it had already caused the prices of everything to skyrocket. You arrived at the auction house, only to find that the price of a starter home had tripled. This is the Cantillon Effect, but let's call it what it really is, a pay-to-win barrier that locks you out of the ownership class permanently. And when your wages, your grinding rewards, couldn't keep up with these new inflated prices, what did the system offer you? Did it offer a difficulty adjustment? Did it offer a fair wage increase? No, it offered you a trap. It offered you debt. This is the second pillar of the rigged casino, the usury trap. In 2026, debt is marketed as a lifeline, but it is actually a shackle. Look at the rise of buy now, pay later services for basic necessities. You are now being encouraged to finance your groceries. You are taking out microloans to buy a sandwich. This is the financial equivalent of eating your own arm to survive a famine. The system knows you cannot survive on $30,000, so it lends you the difference at 25% interest. This turns your life into a subscription service where you are the product. You are no longer working to build a future. You are working to service the past. Every paycheck you get is already spoken for by a creditor who owns your time. You are running on a treadmill that is set just slightly faster than you can run, ensuring that you remain exhausted, desperate, and compliant. A desperate player doesn't revolt. A desperate player just tries to survive the level. Ask yourself right now and be brutally honest, how much of your life is currently rented? Look at your bank statement. Strip away the necessities. How many monthly subscriptions, loan repayments, and credit card minimums are draining your account before you even buy a single loaf of bread? Do you own your phone or do you lease it? Do you own your car or does the bank? Do you have a deed to your home or a lease agreement? If you feel a tightness in your chest answering that, it's because you are realizing that you are playing a game of feudalism too. 0. The lords of the server own the land and the capital. You, the serf, work the land in exchange for just enough coin to stay alive and pay rent back to the lord. The $30,000 wage is carefully calculated. It is not an accident. It is the maintenance cost of a human worker. It is just enough to keep you fed and housed in a minimal capacity so you can show up tomorrow, but not enough to allow you to escape the cycle. If they paid you less, you would starve and the system would lose a worker. If they paid you more, you might save enough to buy your freedom. The starvation wage is the sweet spot of control. And the final boss in this level, it's the algorithm. In 2026, the value of human labor is plummeting because the NPC, the AI agents and automation bots, are getting smarter. The entry-level jobs that used to be the stepping stones to a middle-class life are being deleted from the code. Customer service, data entry, basic administration, copywriting, these quest lines are being automated. This creates a bottleneck. Everyone who gets displaced falls down the ladder into the service sector, into the gig economy, flooding the labor market. When the supply of desperate workers goes up, the price of labor goes down. This is basic supply and demand weaponized against you. Employers don't have to pay more than $30,000 because there are 100 other players waiting in the lobby who will take that job just to keep the lights on. You are disposable. You are a replaceable component in a machine that views your burnout as a depreciating asset. This combination, diluted currency, predatory debt, and the devaluation of human labor creates the perfect storm. It is a structural code. You are not failing because you aren't grinding hard enough. You are failing because the drop rates have been set to zero. The game isn't designed for you to win anymore. It's designed to extract every last drop of value from you until you disconnect. But here is the terrifying truth about a rigged game. It only works as long as the players believe there is still a chance to win. Once you see the code, once you realize the house always wins, you have a choice. You can keep pulling the lever of the slot machine, hoping for a jackpot that will never come, or you can stop playing by their rules entirely. So what does it mean to stop playing by their rules? It means accepting the verdict, as brutal as it is. The cavalry is not coming. The server admins are not going to release a patch that buffs your wages or nerfs the cost of living. There is no political savior, no magical economic reset, and no benevolent corporation coming to rescue you from the $30,000 trap. The old game, the one where loyalty was rewarded with security, is officially offline. If you keep waiting for it to reboot, you will starve in the lobby. The future of this economy is K-shaped. That means the line goes up for the asset holders and down for the wage earners. There is no comfortable middle ground anymore. That safety net has been sold for scrap metal. The middle class is being deleted from the map. You are either going to claw your way into the ownership class, or you are going to sink into the permanent underclass. This realization is painful, like waking up from a long, comfortable dream into a cold room. But it is also your liberation. Once you realize the casino is rigged, you stop feeding coins into the slot machine. You walk out the door. You stop trying to win the game of status and start playing the game of survival and sovereignty. To survive the 2026 starvation wage, you have to become an economic guerrilla. You have to go rogue. First, you must ruthlessly cut your burn rate. The system relies on you being a high-consumption unit. It needs you to buy things you don't need to impress people you don't like. Revolt against this. Every dollar you don't spend is a day of freedom you buy back from the system. Minimalism is no longer an aesthetic choice. It is a tactical survival strategy. If you can learn to be happy with less, you lower the difficulty setting of the game. You make yourself harder to enslave because you require less fuel to run. Second, you must abandon the solo player mindset. The myth of the self-made man is a trap designed to keep you isolated and weak. In a falling economy, the solo player gets picked off. You need a squad. You need a tribe. We are seeing the return of multi-generational households, not out of shame, but out of necessity and strategy. Pooling resources, sharing rent, splitting the cost of food. This is how humans survived for thousands of years before the anomaly of the 20th century. There is no shame in retreating to a defensive formation. Strong communities survive collapses. Isolated individuals do not. Third, you must decouple your self-worth from your net worth. The system wants you to feel like a failure so that you will work harder to buy its approval. Do not give it that satisfaction. You are not your bank account. You are not your job title. You are not the number on your paycheck. These are just metrics in a corrupted database. Do not let the falling value of the currency devalue your spirit. We are entering an era of the great filter. Many will break under the pressure. They will numb themselves with cheap dopamine, endless scrolling, and chemical escapism. They will become the NPCs, wandering aimlessly through the map, complaining about the glitch but refusing to change their strategy. But a few of you, the ones listening right now, will do something different. You will look at the wreckage of the American dream and decide to build something else entirely. You will build a life that is smaller perhaps, but denser with reality. A life where you grow your own food, fix your own tools, and find joy in things that cannot be monetized or taxed. You will stop trying to be rich in a dying currency and start trying to be wealthy in skills, relationships, and time. The economic winter is here. The $30,000 storm is raging outside. You cannot stop the wind from blowing, but you can reinforce your shelter. You can light a fire. You can gather your people close. Remember this final thought as you step back into the world. The economy is fake, but your time is real. Every second you spend worrying about a rigged game is a second you are not living your actual life. Do not let them steal your joy just because they stole your money. The most rebellious thing you can do in a world that wants you desperate and obedient is to be peaceful and free. The game may be broken, but the player is still breathing. And as long as you are breathing, you have a move left to make. Make it count.